So thanks everyone for being here. We encourage you to ask Rachel questions, throughout the session. I think she'll probably do them at the end. But yeah, definitely make it engaging. Rachel's going to cover a lot of content in a small amount of time. So we really thank you for being here. Rachel's a career coach for rebels who specialize in helping people break free of their cubicles and create unconventional careers that truly fit with who they are. So really excited that you could be here. We're going to talk about aligning your career with who you are, which I think a lot of people are now being laid off, and they're thinking outside of the box. They're thinking, what do I do next? Or how can I positively, contribute? How can I use my skill sets in a different way? So I think your topic's really timely and important, and we're glad you could be here. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. You did a great job with the introduction.
All right, I'm going to sign off. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about your business as well, so people have an idea. But thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. So as Rachel said, my name is Rachel Despres, and as Rachel said, I am a career coach for rebels. So I specialize in helping people to break free of their cubicles or desk jobs and create unconventional careers that truly align with who they are, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I'm just going to share my screen with you so I can get my presentation up and going. Perfect. Can everybody see that okay? Just drop a yes in the chat to let me know if everybody can see. Beautiful. Thank you so much. All right, well, let's dive in because as Rachel said, I have a lot of information to deliver in a short period of time. So strap in, get your pen ready and piece of paper because there's going to be lots of good information coming at you. So firstly, to start, thank you to TorontoJobs.ca for having me today to speak. And thank you to all of you for taking the time to join me for the speaking session. And as I said, we're going to be talking about aligning your career with who you are. And whether you decide to pursue an unconventional career or a conventional one, a really crucial part of the process of deciding what kind of work you want to do is ensuring that it's going to align with who you are. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I think theoretically, we all know that aligning your career with who you are is important. But in practice, very few people actually choose their career this way. I see it all the time with my clients. They find themselves really unhappy in their career and they just don't know why. And while there may be some other aspects at play, like a bad boss or a dysfunctional company, more often than not, what's really causing their unhappiness with their work is that it's just not in alignment with who they are. So how is it then that most people typically end up choosing their careers in a way that isn't a right fit for them? What are the decision-making parameters that they're using that end up with them in a career path that doesn't fit with who they are? I'm going to highlight a few of them today, a few of the most common ones that I see. The first one being guidance or advice from parents and teachers. When we make our career choice when we're very young, oftentimes we look to those who are wiser than us or who we believe maybe know us better than we know ourselves. And so they'll say things like, oh, you're so good at X, you should go and pursue a career in Y. And we often will just kind of do that blindly because we trust those people to know what's best for us. But this is not always the case. And this is how a lot of people end up in careers that aren't the right fit for them. People will also look at what their friends are doing. So they'll look around their social circle and they'll model their career after somebody else that they know, whom they respect and who they see loving and enjoying their job. And they'll just do that kind of work for themselves. But again, the problem is that that work might be aligned with your friend, but is not necessarily aligned with you and who you are. People will also choose careers based on perceived future income. This is a big, big one, right? People will choose professions like doctor and lawyer and accountant because of how much money they believe they will be able to earn by pursuing that kind of work. Now, this isn't always the case. You might end up pursuing that thing and not making the kind of money that you want. But we also know that money is not the only factor for happiness. In fact, it plays a much smaller role in our career happiness and satisfaction than we think. So choosing a career based on perceived future income can be a tricky trap to fall into. And the last one I'm going to mention is people choosing careers based on what looks cool or sounds cool, right? So they're concerned about how their career is perceived by others, how good it sounds when they introduce themselves at a party or something like a networking event. They're not concerned about how that work actually is going to feel for them, because they're the one who has to get up and do that work every day. So this is how a lot of people will typically choose their careers. Now, when you look at this list, you might not see any problems with it. You may not see this as being negative things or negative ways to choose a career path. But the problem is that none of these actually factor in one majorly important thing, and that's you, right? You're the one who's got to get up every day and go and do that work. So who you are and what works best for you, for your career, they really need to be central to your decision making. So how do you go about choosing a career that actually does align with who you are? What are the factors that you should be taking into consideration? We're going to be exploring 5 of them together today. So this is where you get those pens ready to start jotting things down, because I'm going to have some activities for you, suggestions for you to jot down. So let's dive into the first one. Values. So values are they're the things that are the most important to you. They're like the principles by which you navigate the world. And you might think, how important can my values really be when it comes to my career? They don't necessarily seem particularly relevant, but they are incredibly relevant to your happiness and success in your career. Because if you've ever done work that doesn't align with your values, or even worse, is actually asks you to compromise your value system, it's going to feel very, very bad, right? This is where a lot of those feelings of dread and those like bad gut feelings come from, is when you're actually being compromised your value system. So when you have clarity about your value system, you can make sure that the work that you do aligns with your value system as opposed to contradicts it. So how do you figure out what it is that your values actually are so you can navigate your career by them or adjust your career around them? So an activity that I would suggest is to ask yourself what's important for you to do, have, and achieve in the different areas of your life. So these areas being your career, certainly, but also things like your health and relationships, friendships and family, your learning and development, money, all of these different areas. Ask yourself what's important for you to do, have, and achieve in each of these areas, and write your answers down. And then once you've written all your answers down, I want you to go over those answers again and see where there's overlap. Where have you written the same things down multiple times? These are your values. So these are the things that are the most important to you, and they're bringing you the most joy and fulfillment in your life. And so you want to make sure that your career either actively includes these values as part of the work, or that it will at least align. So if family is important, a value for you, you want to make sure that your career aligns in a way that allows you to spend lots of time with your family. Or if learning is really important to you, you want to make sure that whatever work you're doing, that learning is a huge component of that role. So this is why values is so important to aligning your career with who you are. Getting clarity on those values will help you align. Now, the second way to align your career with who you are is to explore your strengths and your talents. So your strengths and talents, these are the things that come the most easily to you. Now, they might be things that you have a natural knack for, which we often refer to as talents, or they might be things that you have learned and developed over time, which we refer to as strengths. But how do you know what your strengths and talents are? How do you create that list so that you can lean into it? So the easiest way to do this is to think or look back at past performance reviews and reflect on what it was that your supervisors or managers or bosses said that you did really well, right? These are the strengths that you're possessing on the job. Outside of the work, like the work area specifically, to come up with your list of strengths and values, you can identify what are called your peak experiences. So these are times in your life when you've been operating at your best, you're feeling really engaged and in flow with what you're doing, and you feel really proud of the work that you're doing. These are some of the qualities that are involved in peak experiences. And then once you identify what those peak experiences have been for you, Give some thought to what it was that you were actually doing during those peak experience moments. What was going on during those time periods? Because there's a very good chance that you were utilizing your strengths and talents, which is why those were very pivotal memories for you and why they've stayed with you for so long. You can also think about, what is it that people come to you for? What is it that people ask for your help with? Because those people, by way of coming to you for help or asking for your advice or assistance on something, they're recognizing that you have a strength in that thing, which is why they're coming to you for it. So think about what it is that your friends and family and colleagues, what is it that they're always coming to you for help with? Because those are your strengths and those are your talents. All right. So the third way to align your career with who you are is to explore your passions. So your passions are the things that you feel really, really strongly about, whether they're in support of something or your feelings of passion are against something. And I'll give you some examples of how it can go either way. But the passion thing in general, it's a big mountain for a lot of people, because so much career advice says, follow your passions, follow your passions. But if you don't know what your passions are, that kind of advice can be really disheartening and really discouraging. So how do you figure out what those passions are so that you can follow them, as all of the career advice tends to say? So I have an activity in my Cubicle Renegade coaching program called the soapbox. So I ask people to think about what they'll get up on a soapbox about. So what I mean by that is, what are the things that you can't stop talking about? The things that you will gush about at any opportunity, right? We all know someone who can't stop talking about this thing that they're really into right now. But think about that in the context of yourself. What are some of the things that you get really excited about or riled up about that you just want to share with everybody because you think it's just the best thing in the world? Think about what those things are, because if you feel that strongly that you can't stop talking about it, you are passionate about it. But on the flip side, another way to discover what your passions are to think about the issues and injustices, principles and causes that get you really riled up, or maybe even break your heart. What are the things that make you angry and upset and frustrated and sad about the way that the world is? So this is what I mean about passions against something, right? Like maybe you're really passionate about climate change and making the shift, or maybe you're really passionate about racial injustice, right? Systemic racism, and you want to get rid of that, right? That's a passion, but it's a passion against something. You're saying, I want to work to help eradicate this thing. I want to make this go away because I feel really passionate about this. So think about it either way. Passions being the things that you feel really excited and energetic and positive about, but also the things that you feel passionate to get rid of, and ways that you want to make the world a better place. This is how you discover what those passions are. Now, these challenges and adversities might be things that you have experienced in your own life, or they might be things that you've just, read about in the news or you've seen on TV. They don't have to be things that you've experienced firsthand, but they certainly can be things that you've seen in the world, and you want to make a difference by being involved in that kind of work. Now, number 4, so the fourth way that you can align your career with who you are is to explore your interests. So these are the things that light you up, they light your fire and float your boat. These are the things that you are really, really, really into, right? You are digging these things. But how do you figure out what they are? Well, your interests are the things that people tend to have the closest amount of awareness around, because, they do them in their day-to-day. So just make a list of all the things that you know that you're interested in. Write them down. And if you're feeling stumped and you just have no idea what it is that you are interested in, then my suggestion is to track what it is that you spend your time on in a given week. What is it that you make time for in your schedule? Pay attention to what it is that you search for online, or the movies and TV shows that you're watching on Netflix, or even look around in your physical space. What are the possessions that you value the most? Because the things that we spend our time and our money on are the things that we are most interested, engaged in, and passionate about. So think about what those things are for you. And the fifth and final thing that we're going to discuss today to help you align your career with who you are is your personality. So your personality is the unique combination of characteristics and qualities that make up who you are. Now, all of the things that we've covered so far, like your values, your strengths and passions, and your interests, these are all aspects of your personality. So if you do take the time to do some of the activities that I suggested, you will already have a pretty clear picture of who you are. But that said, humans, we have this really interesting trait where we often we have blinders to how awesome we are and how much potential we have. We just can't seem to see all of it ourselves. So this is why it's really important to call in reinforcements. And I have an activity in my Cubicle Renegade program called Phone a Friend, where you actually contact people who are in your circle, people you've worked with, friends, family, significant others, and you ask them to tell you about you. Ask them to describe you. What are the things that you're good at? What do they see in you? What kind of potential do they believe that you have? And having those conversations with people and seeing and hearing what they say or they write about you can really help to round out those things that we have the blinders on about. So I'd highly recommend you to ask others as well. And then in addition, and only in addition to doing all of these other things, you could also take a personality test. Now, the reason I say in addition to and never ever just on its own is because a personality test is just a test, right? So it's not going to be 100% accurate or reflective of who you are. So it's really important to do this self-discovery work in advance, and then use the test results to really just reaffirm what you've already discovered about yourself. All right, so to recap, how to choose a career that aligns with who you are. The 5 things we talked about are your values, your strengths and talents, your passions, your interests, and your personality. Now, you might be thinking, these exercises are going to provide you with some pretty cool information about who you are, but why is it so important to align your career with these things? Why does it matter if your career is in sync with your values and your passions and your personality? Well, there's a whole heck of a lot of reasons, but I'm going to highlight a few of them. It'll feel good, right? It'll feel so much better when you're doing work that's going to align with who you are, right? A lot of the reasons why we dread work and we don't want to go in every day is because we're not doing work that aligns with who we are, which is why it feels so bad. But when you're doing work that does align with who you are, it's going to feel really good. You're really actually going to enjoy and be engaged with the work that you're doing. And because you'll feel better when you're working, you're going to have access to so much more of your potential. You'll be more on the ball, more creative, more energetic, all of the things that we all desire to have in our careers, right? And because you'll be doing work that comes naturally to you, right? You're tapping into those strengths and those talents. You'll not only be doing your best work, but you'll also be doing it with ease and enjoyment, right? You'll be enjoying the process of doing the work as opposed to feeling very stressed out like we all typically are about work. Now, these reasons that I've mentioned so far might be enough to convince you that it's really important to align your career with who you are. But if you're still not totally convinced, if you're like, you know what, Rachel, this all sounds pretty good, but I'm still not totally sold on aligning my career with who I am, I have one more point that I want to share with you that will help you to hopefully change your mind about that. And that's that you're going to make more money. When you're doing work that aligns with who you are going to make more money. How? Because of all the reasons that I just mentioned. It's going to feel better, which means you're going to be more creative and on the ball, and you're going to be doing your best work. You'll have a great attitude and be excited about what you're doing day in and day out for those 40 plus hours every week. And all of that, all of those feelings and good vibes and that ease and enjoyment is all going to attract things like promotions and pay increases and exciting job opportunities. So there you have it. That is how to align your career with who you are and why it's so important. And I just want to say thank you so much. I know we're running out of time. I want to say thank you so much for joining me for the session today. As a thank you, I want to gift you a module from my Cubicle Renegade coaching program to help you get started on this career alignment journey. So I will drop the link to that in the comments. And then if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in as well. I'll also put I'll also put my contact information in the chat as well for you. So if you do want to stay in touch with me, feel free to do that. If you are jetting off to another session, thank you so much for joining me for the session today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Let this be the time.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you so much for that. You've got a lot of amazing comments here. So thank you. Awesome information, great presentation. So I would have to concur. It's a hard step though, you know, if you've been in a career for a long time and it's becoming repetitive, but it's something that's, you know, you've done forever. It's hard to take that leap or that jump or, you know, do what you really love to do, because life at the end of the day, like that's what it's all about, doing things that you love and being happy, right? So
Absolutely.
you know, all important pointers. So if you could say one thing before we wrap up to our audience to motivate them, inspire them. I know you just inspired them for the last 20 minutes, but what would be your last kind of takeaway points?
Yeah, I would just kind of follow up on the point that you said about the fact that, you know, your career is one of the most important ways that you will express who you are in the world. So whatever it is that you decide to do, make sure that it feels like it's a full expression of who you are, because if you can live in alignment with who you are throughout all of the days and hours of the week, that's the key to a happy life.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for that. It was very inspiring, and you have all your information here so people can reach out to you directly. But thank you so much. We have 2 sessions that are coming up at 2:40. So we have Lama Yunus, who's going to talk about what a strong personal brand can do for your career. And we have Laura Hartnell, who's going to talk about resume writing fundamentals. So amazing ways to follow up with Rachel's presentation. So thanks for your time. I know it takes a lot to prepare, and we really appreciate you being here today. So
no problem. Happy to be here. Thank you all for attending.